You're listening to the Renegade Blitz, the best podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, at RBlitzPod, and at Blitz Videos. Read articles on RenegadeBlitz.com, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app.
And welcome back to the Renegade Blitz podcast. I'm Ty Polk with Chris Ward and Brandon Walker. It's Super Wildcard weekend, Steelers versus Chiefs, and after the heart stopper last week that had me questioning, is football really real? I'm really glad to say that we have a wildcard game to cover this week. And we're glad to have on Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. My pleasure. That was a crazy weekend. I spent all day Sunday thinking it was going to be Chiefs Steelers, and then for about 15 minutes, I wasn't sure there at the end.
I don't think anyone was really sure. Ben Roethlisberger wasn't sure. He was wearing a Raiders helmet signed by Shane Leckler and Sebastian Janikowski for a second for any amount of good karma, good luck, and lo and behold, we're here. And again, thanks to the Jaguars and the Raiders, we could say that they're here. And they traveled to Kansas City, where 3 weeks ago it was the butt kicking of a century. Chiefs won 36-10 in Kansas City, and as expected, the Chiefs are heavy favorites at 12.5 points. Of course, the feeling around with the Kansas City Chief locker room is that the Steelers are still a tough team, and saying that they have been playing like a number one seed. And of course, you could say that, but there's reality in some situations. Matt, how are you feeling about this Steelers team this week? We're kind of thinking that it's good to be back in the second season, really.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's a Chiefs fan is going to have a short memory is going to think this is a favorable matchup just because of what happened just a couple of weeks ago. And I do think that there's reason to believe that, in this season of all seasons that, hey, this matchup probably does favor the Chiefs a little bit more. That maybe they match up better against the Chiefs than they have in the past, or against the Steelers than they have in the past. But anybody who knows the history of this, between these two franchises knows that the Chiefs can't take the Steelers lightly. I mean, Steelers have come into Arrowhead before when the Chiefs have been a favorite in the postseason, and they've beaten them. You only have to go back to 2016 to see that. So, I think that's a big reason why, that you're hearing the Chiefs trying to play the respect card this week, because they do not want to have a letdown against the Steelers.
And Matt, after struggling early in the season, Patrick Mahomes has played as normal high level, ever since really week 8. Mahomes has a 37-12 touchdown interception ratio on the season and has a 12-1 touchdown interception ratio in the last 5 games. Mahomes lit the Steelers up in week 16 with 3 touchdowns and a quarterback rating of 135.1. Do you see the Steelers slowing down Mahomes at all this time around, or really anyone in the AFC playoffs?
I mean, Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator, summed it up, I think, a couple of times earlier this season when he said that really the biggest opponent for the Chiefs offense has been the Chiefs themselves. I mean, when this offense has struggled, it's been because of self-inflicted wounds. And earlier in the season, when turnovers were really the big bugaboo with this team, a big part of it was just the supporting cast letting Mahomes down. I think Next Gen Stats has him with 7 interceptions on passes that had a 75% chance of completion, because guys were just dropping balls that were bouncing into the hands of the opposition. And that cost the Chiefs a couple of games early, and it certainly hurt Mahomes' numbers early. Other than that, I mean, I think that Mahomes has been pretty consistent this year. And once the supporting cast started helping him out a little bit more, he's gotten more comfortable with the offensive line changes. I think you've seen him settle back in. I mean, he still ends up with almost, 5,000 passing yards this season. I think he's second in the league in touchdown passes. I mean, those are the numbers of Mahomes that you expect. The turnovers were the real problem. And most of those turnovers were really, you could put them in the hands of guys like Kelsey and Hill and Marcus Robinson, Marcus Kemp that bobbled balls and gave them away.
Okay, well, we're going to switch to the running game for just a second. We have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who had a shoulder, and Darrell Williams has a toe injury. They were both limited in practice this week. Do you think they both play on Sunday? And I know they don't run the ball much as they maybe should, but do you think they should change course a little bit on Sunday because the Steelers' run defense is so terrible. They are last in the league at 146 yards a game given up on the ground. How do you think that's going to go? I know you got Derek Gore as well, who's showing flashes at times when he's given the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, this has been, mostly a running back by committee this year, mostly due to injuries. I mean, everybody's been banged up a little bit here and there. Even Jerick McKinnon, who just came back, from IR, had a touchdown, his first touchdown as a Chief last week. So, you are starting to see even him contribute. I do think that both Clyde and Darrell are going to play in this game. They were limited on Wednesday. But it certainly is just, I think, an indication that Chiefs are just taking it easy with both those guys. Their expectation all along with Clyde was that he was probably going to miss a couple of games and then come back for the postseason. So I think there's a reasonable chance that you'll see both of them on the field on Sunday. But I think you're right. I mean, I think there's an opportunity for the Chiefs to run the football a little bit more here than they normally do. But once again, I mean, that kind of goes against, who Andy Reid is. I mean, he's going to throw the ball 60% of the time. The opportunities that they probably have are a little bit on first down. If they can get an effective run game going on first down, that's what Andy Reid wants. I mean, if he can get into the second and short situations with some, big chunk plays, that's when he wants to then take shots. And that's when Patrick Mahomes wants to take shots. So if they've got the opportunity to put themselves into some favorable situations early and downs and then go downfield, I mean, that's what they're most comfortable doing.
And now let's switch back to the receivers. Travis Kelsey was on the reserve COVID-19 list, and Tyreek Hill was activated off the list just the day before and only had 2 receptions for 19 yards. Though, of course, with Hill, there was that heel injury that he suffered before the game, actually in pregame warmup. So first, is Tyreek Hill seemingly back to health, or at least something that could be a weapon against the Steelers this game?
Yeah, he was a full participant on Wednesday, but then again, the Chiefs right now, their Wednesday practices are pretty light, no pads, no helmets. So that's probably not a big indicator. The word from the Chiefs has really been that it's more of maybe just a soreness with him than something that he can have a chance of re-injuring or aggravating or even slowing him down that much. They held him out a little bit against the Broncos because it was a game day injury, and a lot of times the Chiefs would even just hold the guy out completely. But I think it gives you an indication of what their training staff thought about the injury and the risk to him, that they did go ahead and let him play, I think, 14 snaps in that game. Certainly, I didn't get the indication from practice on Wednesday what we saw with Tyreek. He looked pretty comfortable out there, so I don't think it's something that's going to limit him going forward. It's going to be sore, but I think they're going to take the approach of just trying to manage the pain and let him play through it.
Yeah, and Matt,
really a huge part of that offensive attack 3 weeks ago. He had 6 receptions for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Steelers. So how are the Chiefs? How do you see the Chiefs attacking the Steelers secondary? That, well, it's done pretty well in the 2 weeks that have passed, but of course it's always a challenge going up against the Chiefs in that passing attack.
I mean, yeah, I think that game against the Steelers was just a little bit of, classic Mahomes. I mean, spreads the ball around to a lot of different receivers, gets everybody active involved, doesn't fall in love with any one single, player. I mean, as successful as they were in that game, I mean, I think Byron Pringle led the team in receiving that day with 75 yards. I mean, I think that game showed, that the Chiefs, even without their big weapons contributing, that they can have big days. And if you get in that kind of a situation, and it's the guys like McCole Hardman and Byron Pringle that are making big plays, and they don't have to rely solely on Kelsey and Hill, that's when the Chiefs offense is definitely its most effective. They can be versatile, push the ball downfield a little bit, stretch the field for sure. That's definitely when this Chiefs offense is its most comfortable and its most efficient. But going back to your previous question, I should have mentioned it earlier. I think it's very worth bringing up the COVID issues, because I don't think that Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey have been as effective since they came off the COVID reserve list. And Travis Kelsey told us on Wednesday, he had a fairly mild symptoms, and if it had been just a cold, that it wouldn't have kept him out. The symptoms weren't severe enough. But at the same time, Kelsey's been slowed down a little bit since then, and I think it's worth knowing, seeing if that really is a result of the COVID or if there's other issues at play. He's been dealing with a hip injury too, so he's pretty banged up. And let's face it, I mean, he's no spring chicken anymore. He's on the wrong side of 30.
I have a question before we get to the offensive line, Chris. All right, we've been noticing they're more methodical now in their offensive approach rather than the last few years. Do you think that's more come playoff time? You think that's better off suited for him, or do you think the big play deep threats with Kelsey and Hill is still their best way of doing things?
I mean, I still think that pushing the ball is their default action. I mean, it's what they want to do, so I think that's what they do best. But they're being more methodical. To me, it's kind of twofold. I mean, one, you go back to 2018 when they just pushed the ball up and down the field at will. Some of that was because they didn't have a defense, and they had to get in the shootouts with teams. Now that they've got a defense that plays more complementary football, I mean, they're able to slow it down. And I think that they've proven that now that they can play at different speeds. They can go slow if they need to. They can, have 17-play drives if they need to. The real catch is just, that they can't get themselves stalled. And that's one thing that has really affected them a couple of times this year, is that they'll fall into the little tiny slumps, where maybe they'll have 3 or 4 drives in a row where they go 3 and out. And aren't moving the football, and that's when you got to jump on the Chiefs. I mean, if they're going to slow things down and they're not going to capitalize on it. And remember, I mean, I think that they definitely miss a guy like Sammy Watkins, who's was a big part of this offense the last couple of seasons, and they've never really found another running back like Kareem Hunt that back in 2018 when they were going crazy. I mean, those were the pieces. So I mean, this Chiefs offense to me, it's not the Superman that it was a couple of years ago. But obviously, I mean, it's still one of the more explosive offenses in the league.
And Matt, the Chiefs have invested a lot heavily into the offensive line this offseason, and it's paid off for them. From left to right, the Chiefs have Orlando Brown Jr., Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Andrew Wiley on the offensive line. Steelers struggled to pressure Mahomes in the Week 16 matchup as T.J. Watt was dealing with cracked ribs, and he missed a good portion of the game. With a healthy Watt now, how do you think Wiley matches up with Watt?
I mean, that should be a very favorable matchup for the Steelers. I mean, Andrew Wiley is more known for his run blocking than his pass blocking. So there's an opportunity there. And to me, it's going to be interesting to see, if the Chiefs are willing to, give some support to Wiley by keeping a running back or a tight end and to chip a little bit and help, because honestly, that's not the Chiefs' MO. They really like to leave those guys a little bit more on an island because they like to send guys out in patterns, and they want to take advantage of that. So they do put a lot of stress on their tackles, and that was different in the past when they had Eric Fisher and you had Mitchell Schwartz. They've been pretty happy with the play they've gotten from Orlando Brown this year, but with the injuries that they've had at right tackle, they've had a lot of different guys in there. Wiley's the guy for now, and like I said, I mean, he's really a run first kind of a guy. I think there are opportunities there, and it's going to be a big question to me, just how the Chiefs treat Watt, because one-on-one, I don't think that's a matchup that Wiley's going to win most of the day.
And real quick before we move to the defense, I just want to know what your thoughts are on Creed Humphrey at center, because I know we watched him coming into the draft because the Steelers were looking for a center, and all the analytics groups and Pro Football Focus, they just rave about Humphrey. So I just want to know what your thoughts are on the rookie.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs fans have just absolutely fallen in love with that guy. I mean, they've been trying to mount a Rookie of the Year campaign for him for the last few weeks because he's played exceptionally well. I mean, the pancake blocks, things like that are going to show up on film, but honestly, it's just the meat and potatoes kind of plays. I mean, the guy doesn't make a lot of mistakes, doesn't commit many penalties. And there was a lot of concerns maybe in the preseason that, snaps were a little bit errant and off course at times. Hasn't really had any of those issues since maybe the first couple of weeks in the season. He's been remarkably, resilient. And then you throw in Trey Smith, who's, right next to him, who has also just been exceptional for the Chiefs at right guard. I mean, that's an incredible get in the 6th round. Those two guys are a big part of what this offensive line's been able to do.
All right, let's move to the defensive side of the ball, where the Chiefs do give up a lot of yards, but close to 370, ranks 27th. However, they do take the ball away. 29 takeaways, fifth most in the league, and they only allow 21.5 points a game, which is eighth. So it's a mixed bag. Bend or don't break. The Steelers did give the ball away 3. They were -3 in the turnover margin, and the Chiefs capitalized with 17 points. Do you see that being the key to the game for the Steelers? If they put the shoe on the other foot, do you think that is the best way to beat the Chiefs? Do you think you guys are intimidated by, the Chiefs, you as a writer for the Kansas City Chiefs, are a little bit non-threatened about the talent level or talent disparity between the two teams that's playing on Sunday?
I mean, I think that, hey, the Chiefs rely pretty much on the numbers, which is that, you know what, if you're going to beat the Chiefs, for the most part, you get to score 28 points. I mean, I think the record is something like a ridiculous, like 46-2 when opponents score, 27 points or less. So the first thing is you absolutely have to score points on the Chiefs. And like you said, I mean, early in the season, teams weren't having any problems doing that. The last half of the season, the Chiefs defense did a much better job of forcing turnovers, and that's what they have to do. I mean, they are a bend but don't break defense. They are going to give up yards. But what Steve Spagnuolo's scheme is completely built around is hold teams to field goals instead of touchdowns and force turnovers. If you do the exact opposite, I mean, if you hold onto the football and you hit in the red zone, that's how you beat the Chiefs. I mean, because you're going to have to score points. Winning a 19-17 game against the Chiefs, it's happened, but it doesn't happen very often. I mean, you got to be effective. So I think any team against the Chiefs, yeah, you're number one, don't turn over the football. And number 2, when you get a chance to score points, you got to score them.
Well, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. But let's talk specifically about the Chiefs' run defense, 21st in it. And the Steelers, yes, their offensive line is makeshift, and they're operating without the offensive line coach that was in attendance for that Chiefs game. It was his final game as the offensive line coach. But they do have Najee Harris, who, despite the injury last week, is still 4th in the rushing title in the NFL. How important is controlling the clock against the Chiefs? Yes, it's not that offense that will run you out of the building even during the Super Bowl championship year. But I imagine that a lot of teams have had success, for example, the Titans, in keeping the ball at almost all costs.
Yeah, I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, I mean, what you'd have to do against the Chiefs is make sure that they don't get a lot of possessions. I mean, if the Chiefs end up with 14 possessions in a game, odds are that eventually they're going to hit on a lot of them. And that's how they end up, getting the 35 points. If you're able to play it tight, close to the vest, long drives, limit the number of possessions. I think the Bengals only allowed the Chiefs 3 possessions in the second half a couple of weeks ago. I mean, if Chiefs don't have the football, they can't score. I mean, it's kind of a rudimentary approach to it, but I mean, I think that's what you got to kind of do. And the last couple of weeks, I mean, this defense had 8 solid weeks. So it played very good football across the board, run pass, whatever. They were getting it done. And then the last 2 weeks, I mean, they've given up 390 yards rushing the last 2 weeks. And the Broncos, I mean, those are bread and butter. I mean, they really got it done, with a couple of different guys on Saturday. So there's opportunities there. I mean, especially between the tackles, you can run on the Chiefs. The one thing that the Chiefs do have going for them is that their corners play pretty tough and physical. I mean, you don't want to run at L'Jarius Sneed on his side of the football outside. I mean, he'll come up with stops. But between the tackles, there's opportunities. And then if you make a guy miss, I mean, that's what the Broncos kind of did, and the Bengals had some success with it too.
Matt, I just want to know what your thoughts are on Melvin Ingram's impact on the Chiefs' defense. He had a huge play there against the Broncos where he forced a fumble, and Bolton picked it up for 86-yard scoop and score. Earlier this year, there was a report that Ingram he brought a lot of swagger to the Chiefs' defense. So, how has he been an impact for that Kansas City defense?
I mean, you can draw a straight line between the Chiefs defense before and after Melvin Ingram, and it's just 2 different stories. And certainly some of that is Ingram himself. I mean, he's played very well. Obviously, his hit, that caused a fumble on Saturday against the Broncos saved the day. And the numbers haven't been flashy, but he's been able to provide a consistent pass rush. And he's really fit in, from a chemistry standpoint, really well with his team. But the biggest benefit that him coming in was just that the Chiefs didn't have enough edge rushers. And so Chris Jones was having to play outside early on. Ingram coming in and allowing Chris Jones to move back to his more natural position at tackle is really, the biggest benefit. But he's also played well. I just really have a hard time being able to figure out how it did work in Pittsburgh, because and I know it just happens. Some guys fit in one place and they don't in another. But in Kansas City, he's been an ideal fit. Gotten along with the teammates rave about him, the coaches rave about him, and he's obviously been having success in this scheme.
It's really about one thing with him. I still go back to that Bills game. I wrote an article about it. I thought that he had the biggest array of pass rushing moves that I've ever seen from someone. And it really made you go like, yeah, there's a reason why this guy was a Pro Bowler in Los Angeles, San Diego. But the one thing with him, I'd like to say the Steelers are so pressure is nice, but you have to get to the quarterback. And of course, Alex Highsmith did step his game up a lot this year. And really with the Steelers, they try to do a rotation guy. He was OLB number 3. So anytime that Watt needed a break, anytime that Highsmith needed a break, he was the guy that would come in that situation. He wasn't asked to step in and, of course, being in a 3-4, not have his hand in the dirt like he does in Kansas City. TJ Watt normally does that in sub packages. So in ways that I just think that he had expectations for his role, and the Steelers just thought in different ways.
And that happens. A couple of years ago, when their Super Bowl run in 2019, the Chiefs had Mike Pennell that came in as a defensive lineman, and this was right after he had signed a big free agent deal, and with the Patriots, and flamed out. It didn't work. The Patriots walked away from him, and the Chiefs signed him for peanuts. And he was a key player on that team. He came into the locker room and was immediately made a big impact, and he improved that team's run defense. It's weird how it could work out for one guy in one situation and not in another. I don't think it's poor reflection on either Steelers or Ingram. I think it was just probably a bad fit.
All right. Speaking of, you got a couple impressive pair of linebackers and young linebackers in Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. Freiermuth was out last time. Main weapon of the Steelers has emerged, rookie tight end. How have how have the Chiefs defended the tight ends this season?
Usually with tight ends, the Chiefs like to use safeties. So, you'll see a lot of rotation around. They're not afraid to put Tyrann Mathieu or Dan Sorensen out there on tight ends. That's what they will normally do. So, with teams that can play multiple sets, you'll see them playing a lot of nickel and dime coverages with, usually it's multiple safeties. They'll play 3 corners out there as well, and they're not afraid to put a corner on a tight end if they have to. But they don't normally they don't like to put their linebackers out there on an island against tight ends very often, because honestly, their linebackers are not really great in coverage. Nick Bolton is a very sure-handed tackler. But the one weakness that he has is that he can sometimes bite on play action, and that hurts him in coverage. So, hey, anytime that you get an opportunity for, especially Bolton and Hitchens, they're both a little bit weaker in pass coverage than I think Willie Gay is. Willie Gay's got a lot of speed. So he's a guy that if you do get a mismatch on a tight end with him, that's probably the one matchup to avoid. But yeah, if Ben sees, tight end on Hitchens or Bolton, that's where the ball needs to go, because there's opportunities there.
Yeah, and Matt, you mentioned earlier how the Chiefs, the corners are physical, and the last game, the Week 16 game, the defensive backs ran a lot of man-to-man. Did you see that happen again on Sunday night? And who will line up with the Steelers' number 1 wide receiver, Deontay Johnson?
Yeah, I mean that's the Chiefs will mix in a little bit of zone, but they are a man team, so that's what they're going to probably stick to most of the time. And for the most part, they don't move guys around. I mean, occasionally you'll see a L'Jarius Sneed or Chavarris Ward follow a little bit, but normally it's going to be Ward and Sneed on the outside, Ward on the left side, Sneed on the right side, and then when they go into some nickel packages, Sneed will kick inside, and a guy like Rashad Fenton will come in into the outside. So they stick to that pretty much. I mean, and I would expect them to do the same thing this time around too. Like I said, you'll see them mix up a little bit as far as, whether it's safeties coming in the nickel or in the dime coverages. But that's kind of their key rotation.
All right. So who do you think will have a big game for the Chiefs, and what is your biggest concern going into this wild card matchup?
Yeah, I even though that they have not been having big games lately, I mean, the Chiefs triplets are big time players. I mean, Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill. If the Chiefs are going to win playoff games, it's going to be those three guys. So would not be surprised at all if the majority of the offense runs through them. If Kelsey is a matchup nightmare for everybody. So if he has another big game, I mean, I think that's certainly a big key for the Chiefs. Again, I mean, I think that the biggest question for a game like this is going to be turnovers. The Chiefs can't turn the football over. They can't make mistakes. They can be their own worst enemy at times. So as long as they're not committing penalties, as long as they're not turning the football over, that's what they have to worry about. You see either one of those two things happening, Chiefs are going to be in trouble, because I don't think that they have the makeup and comeback skills that we've seen them before. I mean, we just haven't seen them making these, 17-point comebacks. I mean, they can still do it, but I still think it's a team that if you get them down, it's easier to keep them down than it's been in the past.
All right, man. It is prediction time. 12-point spread, 12.5. Isn't it? 12.5-point spread.
Yeah.
That's a pretty hefty spread, but who do you have in this game?
Yeah, I'm going to be pretty close to the spread. I don't have a lot of faith in Ben's ability to push the ball downfield, and I think that's just something you have to do against the Chiefs. I still think there's probably some magic in that guy, and I would not be surprised if he comes in and leaves it all out there on the Arrowhead Field. But that spread sounds about right to me. I'm going with the Chiefs 27-13.
Hold up, I want to say, there's an article here in Pittsburgh saying, how are the fans feeling about this game on Sunday? Because they were walking around saying Big Ben's retirement party and everything. You do live in Kansas City, correct?
I do live in KC, yes.
Okay, you do live in Kansas City, so you probably heard the fans and all. I mean,
it was from I did see the retirement part, but it was based off what Nick Wright said on ESPN. He said that
Fox Sports One.
Yeah, the Chiefs were better off. My train of thoughts lost on that.
The retirement party. NFL memes got it because they're all on it, and it's a popular sentiment that I've seen over the last few weeks on Twitter. People really want to see Ben Roethlisberger retired.
Nick Wright said that the Chiefs were better off. This is better than having a bye week. That's what he said.
Yeah, some of those talking points have been reiterated around here. I've certainly seen the memes and some on talk radio. There's been a little bit of that same kind of talk here in KC. I mean, the fan base, I think they are pretty confident. I mean, I don't think the Chiefs fans think they're going to lose this one. Can't say the same thing in the locker room. I think that the coaching staff and the players, they got way too much respect for this team to be having any kind of letdown like that.
And that the Steelers are 1-1 against the Chiefs in the postseason. They lost to the Chiefs in the 1993 Wildcard round game, and they beat the Chiefs in the 2016 division round game. And both games were at Arrowhead. The 2016 one's more recent. That was the game where Alex Smith was with the Chiefs quarterback, and Chris Boswell had I think he was
6 field goals.
6 for 6.
Yep.
That game's more recent. But do you remember the first one in 1993?
I do remember that. It was I forgot about that. It was a long time ago. I was in college back then.
Sorry for making you feel old.
That's okay. Unfortunately, I feel old all the time.
Oh man. But you're talking more about that that 2019 Chiefs team, I could tell you so much stories about how I would be working and I would leave the break room. I think it was the Texans game. They were down 28. I go out there. I worked at Walmart. I pushed carts for about 30, 45 minutes. I come back. The Chiefs are in the lead. And everybody in the break room is just looking like, yo, you missed the greatest thing I've ever seen. And I'm just sitting around here. It's like, done. Super Bowl. Give it to him.
Oh, yeah.
I remember in the press box that day with 28-0. Most of us already had our Chiefs loss stories done in the first half. So
yeah, just talk about that entire run that season, because it just seemed that it just seemed like they're done. And then, of course, it changes the entire narrative about the team. And I got to ask, how many times had you had to rewrite your articles in that playoff season?
Repeatedly. That was that entire, oh gosh. If you put the number at 8.5, I'd probably say the over. I mean, that season was like that the entire year. I mean, it was just one thing after another. And and even the year before, I mean, you go back to that Rams Chiefs game on Monday night, just still one of the most crazy things I've ever seen in my entire life. That might be even crazier than some of the comebacks the Chiefs pulled off. But yeah, that 2019 season, I mean, Mahomes was just in a mode where, my dear friend, the late Therese Paylor, would say that, Mahomes has that over my dead body gene. And you just saw it. I mean, occasionally he would just kick into a mode and it's like, we're not losing this game. And whatever it takes, it's going to get done. I mean, and you saw that. I mean, hey, you ever get the chance to see, as crazy as it is watching Patrick Mahomes on TV, you ever get the chance to see him live, go do it, because, you will see at least one throw that you've never seen before. And you're going to wonder, how in the world did a guy make a throw like, and it might not be a bomb. It might just be one of those no-look sidearm flips around a lineman, but he's going to at least give you one throw you've never seen before.
I was going to ask a question. Talk about Mahomes. We saw about 3 years ago when the Steelers had their home opener, he went crazy. I was like, generational talent, give him a gold jacket now. You just saw it. Did you guys see it like during his rookie year when he was sitting down? Did you see it at that moment when we all saw it here in Pittsburgh? When did you see that we got somebody here?
I mean, it was definitely there as a rookie back in 2017 at training camp. I mean, even he was testing things out at that point. I mean, and there was a lot of talk about, hey, maybe he turns the ball over a little bit too much. But he was at that point just trying to, kind of figure out what he could do. But even then, I mean, that July 2017, I mean, you would see him just effortlessly flick the ball 65 yards downfield and drop it on a guy's hands in stride. And you're just like, how in the world can he do this? And you would just see these throws through windows that, like, how in the world is that getting through? I mean, with the velocity that he had. And the Chiefs, I mean, once the season begins, we don't get to see the scout team quarterback in practice. So we didn't get to see anything during the season, but you would go into the locker room and, I mean, all the time, and there'd be somebody almost every single day that would be, man, you should have seen what Mahomes did today, or, you should have seen what he did yesterday. The veterans were just absolutely raving about him. So I don't think there was any doubt. I mean, even during that rookie season when he was playing behind Alex Smith, Chiefs knew what they had.
All right. Well, I mean, another question. Do you think, like, we're going back to 2017 now, do you think they could have went a little bit further in 2017 with him as a rookie instead of Alex Smith?
That's always been the question that, hey, should maybe, especially after he had that game in Denver in the season finale, should the Chiefs have gone to him in the second half against Tennessee in that playoff game? I still think Chiefs were doomed in that game the moment that they lost Travis Kelsey, because he went out with a concussion in the first half, and that would have ended their season. I mean, there's no way that they were going anywhere without Travis Kelsey. But But I don't know. I mean, I think Alex Smith was just too good, and the offense was just built in a certain way. So I think Alex took him as far as he could. But, I mean, if the Chiefs wanted to take the next step, it was Mahomes' time. But I'm not sure he was ready in 17.
Matt, this is the last question from me, but I saw Andy Reid was praising the Steelers today. He said that they're playing like a number 1 seed. So I thought that was interesting. And also Roethlisberger, he was kind of playing that underdog role by saying like no one was giving the Steelers a chance. So do you think that's kind of like maybe some mind tricks by both Reid and Roethlisberger heading into the game?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's both, mind tricks. I mean, Andy Reid's never going to, strike down an opponent. I mean, he'll be facing a team that's 0-16, and he's going to be talking about he's looking forward to the challenge of playing them and that they're a good football team. But Ben reminded me today, my first year on the beat was 2016. And so one of my first games that I covered was that Chiefs Steelers game in 2016 when the Steelers just absolutely destroyed them on Sunday night. And that Wednesday we did our interviews with the opposing team and coaches, and Ben spent like 3 questions talking about how great Marcus Peters was as a cornerback. He's like, this guy picks off all the passes. You got to know where he is on every single snap. You got to account for him. And doggone it if, Big Ben on the first play from scrimmage from like his own 1-yard line drops a 50-yard bomb on Marcus Peters. I mean, he just went after him on the very first snap. And we're like, yeah, Ben was just blowing smoke at us about how great Marcus Peters was because he planned to go after him from the very first play.
Yeah. Rat poison, not just for Alabama, it's also for the pros as well.
That's right.
And that was Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. Matt, enjoyed the talk with you. Hope to have you on again.
Absolutely pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
I'll see you, Matt. Thanks. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Well, we talked about it, and of course, again, Chris, again, thanks for putting my article up earlier today. It talked about the pitfall, the potential future success of teams that finish with historically bad point differentials, and this was something that I studied. I actually got it off the Raiders beat reporter for the AP, Josh Dubois, and hopefully we get a chance to talk with him, maybe if it's a 6 versus 7 matchup in the AFC Championship, but I digress. The top 2 teams, when you look on there, the 2010 Seahawks and the 2011 Broncos, within 6 years, I use that because of the 1989 Steelers making it to the Super Bowl eventually in 1995 and that conference championship in 1994. They traded a Super Bowl win and a Super Bowl loss, and most of the teams in that designation within 6 years made it to at least the conference championship game. So if you want to see more about that, you could go check out the article on renegadeblitz.com, the blog. Be sure to check that out. Just wanted to pimp my stuff out there. But guys, I want to first hear your predictions for Super Bowl, and you don't have to go through the entire playoffs, just 2 teams. I'm going to stick with what I had from the beginning, and I got Bills-Packers. Packers winning.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You're the Super Bowl guy.
No. Go ahead, Chris, because you already
I'll probably go Chiefs. I think the Chiefs make it the AFC. I don't know. This whole season's been tough to predict, but yeah, probably NFC's got a little bit more for better teams, I think. I'd probably Chiefs Packers. I don't really have anything. I think they're the 2 best teams, but that's probably not going to be it. But that's what I'm going with right now.
I'm gonna have out of the NFC. I'm gonna start AFC first. I'm gonna roll with the Tennessee Titans. Derrick Henry comes back. They're the best team to match up with the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Patrick Mahomes has not played a road playoff game yet. He has to go through that to get to that. To obviously on Sunday to get there. And for the NFC, oh God, this is sacrilege to me to say.
Oh, I see exactly where the wheels are turning. Don't you tell me it right now. I'll say it for you. You're choosing the boys. Oh my God.
I would cuss at you, but this is a family show, so I'm not going to do that.
You get
Yeah,
one
but yeah,
I know I'm right.
I can't do it. I yes, I think Dallas.
Oh my God.
If they're at their best, they're rolling. Got the number one offense in the league. Got the most turnovers in the league. So if they are at their best, clicking on all cylinders, but the thing is, I don't know if they'll get past. If they get past San Fran, I think they could get to the Super Bowl. And who wins? This is a wild guess. Tennessee, because I think they have that 2001 New England Patriots feel. I know. Chris had his head down hearing about the 01 Patriots, but there we go.
There's a couple teams in the NFC I could see going. AFC, I don't like. The Chiefs, I think, are by far the best team, unless Derrick Henry could come back and they get.
Yeah, I could see the Chiefs. I could see the Chiefs. The Titans, and the Bills in the AFC. The NFC, my eyes are only on that bad man, Aaron Rodgers. You got to go through Green Bay, and that's always tough to do. Yes, Tampa went into there and smoked them last year, but still, 3 times they've ended up in like one of the top 2 seeds. When that happens, you're bound to make it through. So I just believe that it's going to be Rodgers' time once again, and I think he gets that second Super Bowl. Sorry, Bills Mafia. I had to do it.
I don't think the Cardinals are that good.
As much as it pains me to say, but I unless J.J. Watt pulls off J.J. Watt things like his brother T.J.
The Cowboys, if they could get, like you said, Brian, I think if they get past the 49ers, they do have a good chance to go far. I don't know about the Super Bowl, though. Rams are a weird team, too. I don't really know. They got some playmakers, though, but I think
I can't trust Matthew Stafford in a big game yet.
Yeah,
I mean, I could trust him because this is a man that has the record in most game-winning drives, 4-quarter comebacks, one of those stats in a single season. So if you let him hang around, it's Big Ben.
But he can do that. But he can also easily throw you out of games too.
True, that is very true.
Very easily.
I think because this shot, he's not going to throw it away. I'm going to trust in Matthew Stafford, but I just don't think it's enough for the Rams to go into Green Bay.
Yeah, I don't think Tampa Bay gets a championship game. I think they'll lose in the divisional round game.
You know what? You can run on Green Bay. You can run on the Packers. They have shown vulnerability in the run game, in the run defense. So if you can control the clock, you can.
But I agree with Ty. They've been top seed for so long, and like, can you imagine if they don't go to the Super Bowl again with number 1 seed and everything?
I think you'd have to look at it. I think every Yinzer wants it because Aaron Rodgers coming to Pittsburgh instantly puts the Steelers back on the map, and they're going to find offensive line help. But that's the offseason. We'll talk about that later. But as far as the Renegade Blitz, we all want the Steelers to win the Super Bowl. We got to go urinating free on you. But let's talk about the task at hand, and that's this a primetime Sunday night playoff game. I'm going to say this right now. This is the one part of anarchy that could happen, and there's so many signs pointing to this. Only one team out of the 10 teams listed in that tweet have not won their wildcard playoff game, and that was the 2017 Buffalo Bills. But they still had their quarterback in Josh Allen, just very young at that point.
No, he wasn't in the league. That was 2000. No.
I was wrong.
They was rolling around with Tyrod Taylor and Nathan Peterman.
Never mind. And I guess that's the one thing that goes into them because all teams in that list, they did not have their quarterback on the roster whenever they made it to the conference championship or the Super Bowl. Neil O'Donnell was not the quarterback for the Steelers in 1989. It was Bubby Brister. Yeah. Or Tom Zach, 1 and 2.
It was Brister.
But let's talk about this. Chiefs Steelers. I don't have the guts for anarchy right now. Talk to me during Sunday night. I don't have the guts for anarchy as it stands right now. I'm gonna have to. They're gonna have to show me the victory. I'm still saying Chiefs, but I'm saying that it's gonna be close because it can never be easy, especially with a quarterback's last stand. So I'm gonna say the Chiefs just barely reached that 28-point threshold. I'm gonna say 28-20, Kansas City.
Go ahead.
Second, okay. Brian has to go last, I guess. The grand finale, but
big takes, Brandon.
Yeah, big. I think they're going to reach that point spread. I don't think it'll be as bad as last time, but I'm going to say the Chiefs handled the Steelers pretty well. 34-17, so that's 17 points. That's
it's over.
Not as bad as last time, but they're gonna. I think they'll keep it a little bit close, and then they'll pull away in like the second half.
Oh, now it's my turn. Okay.
Big takes, Brandon. Here we go, folks.
Hold on. Here we go. All right.
No big
Mike
takes
Tomlin
here.
is one of the best coaches in the league at being an underdog coach. We all talk about and roast the Tomlin special. It's deserved. But boy, does his team step up in big games. And this is a game that they're going to show up and show out. TJ Watt is going to be matched up against Andrew White, who's probably the worst offensive lineman. TJ Watt has the capability of taking the game over, getting a couple forced fumbles, getting turnovers. Najee Harris can run the ball. Run defense is a little suspect. Control the clock. That being said, I'm gonna say the Chiefs are gonna still win the game. I'm not.
Mid takes, Brandon. Mid takes, Brandon.
I ain't that. Come on, bro. If you look at the talent level disparity, come on, like. They are probably the least talented team in this playoff bracket.
Yeah.
So
I think Las Vegas.
I'm going to say
talent. I'm surprised that Las Vegas's point differential is more negative than the Steelers is.
They got whipped a couple times by
Kansas City enough times. That's what did them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's what probably did it. And I think they got smacked another time, too. But I'm going to have the Chiefs winning. Steelers will cover. I'll go 31-21 Kansas City. And
10 points.
10 points.
Yeah.
That is a big spread.
That's a big spread.
That is screaming for you. The bettors in Vegas are like, oh, please take the Steelers with the points. And I think that's going to happen.
All right, so let's kind of put this in a nicer tint for the Steelers fans watching. If the Steelers win, who was the player that put them over the top?
Oh, TJ Watt for me. He's going to have to get a couple. They're going to have to get a couple turnovers. Like they have to win it by at least 2. Turnover differential. You could also say Najee Harris. They're gonna have to get that run game going. Keep Mahomes off the field. I think that's really their only recipe for a upset, or even just to keep the game close.
What's the Steelers formula? Who's gonna be the reason why the Steelers beat the Chiefs? Easy, the Chiefs. Like I said, Kansas City's gonna have to help the Steelers beat Kansas City. So they're going to have to beat themselves with turnovers, penalties, maybe a missed field goal here, maybe time for a block punt. your boy Killebrew. It's gonna be a monumental effort by both teams for the Steelers to win.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiments, but I'll also say this. I think the corners for the Steelers are gonna have to win this game because they're gonna have to show that they can guard those big hogs for the Chiefs. I'm gonna say this: Witherspoon and Hayden are gonna be a big factor if this is a win. Specifically, Witherspoon. Because Witherspoon probably has the best chance at matching up with the Chiefs' speed as a sole corner, and he also has the length to potentially shut him down. That's gonna be one. They're gonna need a pick from Akello, and Joe Hayden. He just has to provide steadiness out there, and maybe add in a pick from Minka in the back end as well. But that basically, I guess I'll improve it to the secondary of the Steelers. They'll have to be big in this game. I don't know if they're not going to get 303 touchdowns from Ben Roethlisberger. If that happens, then that's a dream scenario. But I don't think that's the Ben Roethlisberger from that 2016 Sunday night game is not walking through that door.
But okay, you want me to name a Steeler?
Yeah, you can name one.
I named like that. Okay. Deontay Johnson's going to have a big game. He's going to have to be focused. He's going to need at least 6 catches for 100 yards. Because I don't know how good their corners really are. They're not they're average corners, I would say. So Deontay Johnson had to win that matchup.
Yeah, he didn't
have at least a couple scores.
Their cornerbacks had a really good game against the Steelers last time. They really did a good job playing man coverage, and you're right. Johnson has to these mental mistakes, some of the drops. He had a fumble last time they played against the Chiefs, so they're going to have to play like a near perfect game, really. And the Chiefs are going to have to mess up a little bit, and I think they really just have to get Najee going, and they have to get out of the gates fast because they only like the last 6 of their last 7 games they only have 1 touchdown in the first half. Like if that happens, same thing's going to happen a couple of weeks ago against the Steelers on Sunday night.
I believe so.
Well, guys, it's Wildcard weekend. Games start on Saturday. Steelers game on Sunday, the first ever Monday night Wildcard game. No matter what, guys, let's just enjoy the fact that we got a full slate of football. It's one of the last full slates that we have. So regardless, I mean, let's just go have fun watching football because there's really no expectations for the Steelers, and I think that's probably going to help them in the end more than hurt them, especially over the last couple playoff trips. So no matter what, let's just have fun and watch some football, guys. 8 o'clock on NBC. We're going to hear the over-under for how many mentions of it could have been tied and they could have missed the playoffs for the Steelers with Chris Collinsworth. I say the over-under is 8, and he's probably going to just touch over the over because it's such a big thing. I'm going to actually give you a number. I'm going to say 10.
Yeah, he was definitely freaking out on Sunday night, though. It was definitely Steeler fans.
He made me go irrational, and I don't like being irrational.
Yeah. Plus, we get to enjoy it because it's Martin Luther King Jr. weekend.
Yes.
I don't have to go to work on Monday, so therefore.
Hey, you want to do a Sunday directly after this game, Sunday night potential grief or super happiness pod?
I don't know if you want me to do that.
It could be the one uncensored podcast we do a year. We got one. And honestly, because everyone's going to be crying, Ben's going to be, we might turn it into a Twitter space while we're at it. We got the capability. We got the capability. And trust me, I know that a ton of people would join. We would just let people roll.
Let's do it.
There's trolls out there. But
let's do it.
I think I know how to record spaces. I'd have to do a test stream over the weekend. But
we can do that.
I'll see if I can make it happen.
Yeah, if they pull off against Chiefs, man, that'll be something else.
Yeah, I'll be
the narrative of this game will also, like, their playoff thing. Like, if they go and they get blown out, like, people are just going to look like, okay, the Steelers, they got lucky to get in. Like, they came a long way. But if they play a tough game, they play the Chiefs, at least respectable. I think that's going to look good towards the future, even with Ben not there. Yeah. They're going to have to figure out the quarterback position, but, at least show that they have the pieces to work with.
They got the pieces. They just need to figure out that quarterback position, but we'll see. Well, that's another time for them. Let's see Sunday. Let's see. They got to line up and play on Sunday. Let's see them play. Nothing like playoff football. Favorite time of the year.
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
All right, so that'll do it for us. I'm Ty Polk. He's Chris Ward. I'm putting that way. That's Brandon Walker. And you've been listening to the Renegade Blitz.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, at @RBlitzPod, and at Blitz Videos. Read articles on renegadeblitz.com. Like us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. The Renegade Blitz podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and wherever else you can listen to podcasts.